102.9 WKXX, Atala, Anniston, Albertville. Your home for Fox Sports. WKXX is live for the fastest 2 hours in sports talk radio. Get ready for Chase Robinson.
He has got to be a player they can rely on in big situations.
And Gerhard Mathangani.
Has the trust of his team. Sounds like the makeup of his team is in a really good space, and I believe that's because of the culture he's curated down there.
For WKXX Live, these guys have you covered from preps to pros and everything in between. Now, let's go inside the Fox Sports 102.9 studio with Chase and Gerhard for WKXX Live.
Welcome in on this Thursday afternoon. And welcome you to WKXX Live. Chase Robinson here, along with Gerhard Mathangani. Hope you're having a great Thursday, having a great week. Glad to be back in here with you here on this Thursday. And Monday and Tuesday, great shows. Appreciate you, Gerhard, flying solo a couple days.
No doubt. It was one of those things where I kind of lived your world for a while, doing these solo shows. A lot of respect, but yeah, it was great to have you be able to enjoy some time off. Dale was fantastic in here in studio, and we were able to knock the games out.
Yeah, so I am refreshed and recharged and ready to go for football season, because we got some football on tonight as our season begins with the Oaks Bluff Eagles coming up tonight. Big Etowah County rivalry game, Gerhard. I mean, this is the 73rd meeting between Oaks Bluff and Southside. They always do this game on a Thursday night. So it's a good Etowah County rivalry game to kind of get the season going. I know Southside had a game last week. This is Oaks Bluff's first game. So excited about what's to come tonight.
Two marquee programs in the state, two that have statewide recognition as far as their overall brands go. A coach that will get some Hall of Fame votes, and Coach Mike Robertson going up against the guy in his second season. So interesting coaching dynamic between these two teams. Two different styles of play, and I think you'll see that on display as well. And then two teams that are, as you said, they're vying for kind of their spot in their own particular regions. And so I think this is a good kind of building block game for both, and then for the communities themselves, getting to see the rivalry back at it. And honestly, there's not a lot of games today statewide. Yeah. So this is kind of the marquee game of the state, and the AHSA statewide game of the week as well.
Yeah, so it'll be on television, but you can listen to it right here. Greg Watkins and myself will be along to bring you Oaks Bluff High School football. Coming up at 6:30, we'll have the countdown to kickoff show, as we'll talk with Coach Mike Robertson. We'll preview the game, the season, as Oaks Bluff gets underway tonight. But I know I kind of, as I went out of town, I was trying to keep up with scores and everything last weekend. I know you talked about it Monday and Tuesday, but really a great first weekend, the week 0 of high school football as well. And tonight and tomorrow we'll see I'm sure what's going to be a really fun week 1 of high school football.
We saw a ton of great matchups all across the state, right here in the region, right here in the Northeast Alabama area. And then, but you saw it everywhere. For example, like a team like Donahoe down big against Weaver came back to win it. And then you saw a team like Hoover but Thompson go over to Georgia and have some struggles against a really good Georgia football team. A lot of teams went across the state lines. Coach Greg Watkins made a great point that only 2 Alabama teams that played Georgia teams won. So as great of high school football we have here, Georgia's really good. I like to see teams challenge themselves out of state. A lot of rivalry games were played last week. A lot more this week, like the one you highlighted that's on here tonight. So a lot of interesting dynamics as we go now into the second week of football, but week 1 officially as it relates to the HSAA.
Absolutely. And one of those teams that played a Georgia team, the Cherokee County Warriors, got a win over Model Georgia. Their head coach, Jacob Kelly, is going to join us coming up at 2:30. And at 2:15, we're going to talk with Chris Stevenson, the head football coach of the Sardis Lions. Sardis started off the season with a win. So a couple of high school football coaches will join us here in the next few minutes. And we've got a lot to cover today, but I want to start with the Braves. And I have missed talking Braves baseball over the last week or so. I actually had a really good Braves talk with my Uber driver yesterday in Arizona, who just happens to be a really big Braves fan. So I was able to talk some Braves. They are now just a game and a half behind the first place Mets, and a nice sweep of the Pirates and a 14-2 win yesterday to get the sweep. The Braves are playing really good baseball.
I think two things are at play here. Number one, we talked almost ad nauseum about that really rough stretch that they had against the Mets in New York. And we had Ben Ingram on and other people that said, hey, can they brush that off and mentally get over it? Well, we've seen that happen over the course of the last 2 weeks, but especially since their series against the Mets back in New York, where they were able to get somewhat a revenge situation where they were able to take 3 of 4. And then after that was, can they still keep that focus here in the next games afterwards? Because you have a really good Houston team, won that series 2 of 3, and then sweeping the Pirates. It just lets you know that this team, I feel, they're not resting on their laurels. Of course, they're behind in the standings, so they're still chasing. They still have a hunter's mentality, but at the same time, they're looking at the standings and saying, we talked about this earlier, the schedule would break Atlanta's way because Atlanta would get some of the teams that weren't as good, and they had the Pirates, and the Mets will have to take on some really strong teams over the course of the next couple of weeks. We've seen the Mets struggle a little bit in their Subway Series against the Yankees, and so to see the Braves continue to put their foot on the gas pedal, I think it bodes really well for this team.
Absolutely. Braves off today. Mets have the Rockies. I want to talk Kyle Wright, though, because this guy's been, he's had his ups and downs as a Brave, but this season he's been very consistent. Yesterday, threw 7 scoreless innings, gave up only 2 hits, had 8 strikeouts. That is what the Braves are looking for out of their starters.
In a 14-2 game, you expect the talking point to be the offense. But in my opinion, the talking point is Kyle Wright and the way this defense is playing. The defense is playing phenomenal. I'll get to some statistics here in a moment. But for a young guy to be producing this late in the season, number one is really good, but also number two, it shows you how well the Braves have handled him. If you'll remember, he struggled in Queens in their matchup against the Mets. What they did afterwards, they put him on a little bit of rest, took away I guess it was the one start right after his normal start would be, and that really refreshed him. And he's now come out in his last 2 outings, and he's been sensational. And you talked about yesterday, he wanted to go the complete game. He talked to the reporters after the game saying selfishly he wanted to, but then after they got a 13-0 lead, or a 0 lead at the time, he knew he was done for the day. But it just shows you where he is mentally, and I think he's in a good spot physically. He's tied right now with Justin Verlander for the most wins with 16. So, to me, I think the struggles from last year and then the struggles that have happened right after the All-Star break, it seems like the struggles from last year went away at the beginning of the season, and the struggles after the All-Star break have disappeared now.
Yeah.
And they've done so in 2 different ways. One, just getting the reps, and the other, getting the rest. And I think that's where Kyle Wright is right now.
Yeah, for sure. Looked really good yesterday. He's one of those guys, I think, if he can keep this up, could be really helpful in the postseason. You mentioned the offense, William Contreras, home run. And then Matt Olson, who's had a kind of a quietly really good season with a grand slam yesterday.
That was huge. I think that one was really needed as far as this team being able to have that knockout punch. They have that Mike Tyson kind of feel to them. They can win a 3-2 game, but then they can also just knock your block off with a couple of hits and 3 guys getting hot. This is a really, really good baseball team, and it just feels like, to me, over the course of the last 6 weeks, you could just call on a different guy. You're not asking the same 2, 3, 4 guys to come up with big plays. Yeah. They can go 1 through 9, and any one of them can get you hot.
Here is Matt Olson after the game yesterday talking with Bally Sports. They're in the post-game interview following the big win over the Pirates.
Well, Matt, first grand slam since April of last year, but let me throw this one out. You are the first ever Brave to have it splash down in the Allegheny River.
Really?
Yes.
I'll take it.
So where does that one rank? Because I know good and well you've looked at that highlight by now.
Yeah, it was a good one. Felt good. I've struggled staying back on some off-speed so far this year, and it was nice. Took a good balanced swing and got the barrel to it.
Certainly did. You can hold that one over your teammates now for a little bit, okay?
Okay, all right.
That was Matt Olson there talking about that grand slam he hit. And, you can tell there he wanted that.
Yeah.
And he was just waiting for his pitch. And that's kind of what he said there. He'd been waiting on his pitch. He found it. and look what he was able to do.
Yeah, and you said it earlier, I think you said it really well, a quiet, really strong season, because he doesn't necessarily have whenever Acuna is on a streak, you know it because it's flamboyant. Whenever Austin Riley went on his streak, we were talking about MVP. Matt Olson has just been kind of the quiet, steady hand so far. 27 home runs, the longest of which was the most impactful of which was the Grand Slam. But this is a really just good baseball team just in general, just finding out ways to win games. I think that's the biggest thing. And Dansby Swanson talked about it. Just we can win in so many different kind of ways. Throw out some numbers over the last couple of games here. They outscored the Pirates 22-4 in the series. In the last 6 games, they're outscoring opponents 40-17. And then as far as the defense goes, talked about how the defense is playing really well. They've allowed 4 runs or less in 7 straight, but also in 14 of the last 15. And we've talked earlier about their numbers when they score 5 or more. So that magic number seems to be 4 and 5. They score more than 5, they're almost unbeatable. And they are almost unbeatable when they hold teams to 4 or less. They've won 14 of their last 15. This is, I think, something to me that I believe that this is what we need to keep an eye out for as the season goes along, because it's kind of like teams that play I formation football. They can beat you one way. But if you have a team that can go I formation and a team that can spread you out in football, that's when they become dangerous. And the Braves are the baseball version to me of that.
It's a really good illustration there. And of course, Braves are off today. Got a series with the Cardinals that starts tomorrow. And so we'll see what the Braves can do if they can get themselves in it. Looking forward to seeing the rest of the way here for the Atlanta Braves. We're going to talk some high school football coming up next, as the head coach of the Sardis Lions, Chris Stevenson, will join us on the other side of this break. Stick around as we continue on this Thursday afternoon here on WKXX Live.
Being an Army
Welcome back in. It is WKXX Live here on a Thursday afternoon. A football Thursday because we've got football on the radio tonight. Hokes Bluff and Southside. Pregame show at 6:30. Kickoff at 7. Chase Robinson, Gerhard, Mathangani here with you as we hope to be joined by the head football coach of the Sardis Lions, Chris Stevenson, here in just a few minutes. Sardis starting off the season really good. With a win over DAR and a close one, 16-14. So a great start there for Coach Stevenson in his time at Sardis.
Longtime Florida head coach. He's never had a losing season from his days at Florida, and he obviously wanted to get off to a good start in his first day as a head coach in the state of Alabama, and he kept that going with a win to start off the year 1-0. Every time you have a new coach, and we've talked to a bunch of new coaches, whether it's new in general to coaching as a head coach in general, or going to a new program, and in Coach Stevenson's case, you're dealing with guys who don't necessarily know you. You're trying to learn them. They're trying to learn you. And at the same time, you're trying to compete in really tough circumstances. And so I think for me, it's a really impressive win overall. The fact that it's a close game shows that they were able to pick up that victory and at the same time play good situational football. And he'll, of course, highlight a lot more of those things as we talk to him. But in my opinion, you can't get off to a much better start than a nice win over a solid program in game number 1.
Absolutely. And there was some really good games as I was looking through the scores from last Friday night's games. We have a lot of teams here, and I think, Etowah County only had, 2 teams make the playoffs last year.
Right.
I think we could see more of that this year. I think, and you look at, Gadsden City,
right,
who they're playing, and I think a lot of people, as I was seeing, were not happy with that game and Gadsden City and this and that. They were playing a really, really good football team.
They certainly were. I mean, Carrollton would compete, and this is not an exaggeration. They would compete with some of the upper echelon 6A and 7A teams here in the state. That's how good that football team is. And I think some of the criticism was a little unfair, not knowing how good, not just Carrollton in general, but Georgia football as a whole really is going into this year. I think that we will see a much improved Gadsden City team going into this week. Another really tough game against Hewitt-Trussville. I do believe that the Titans can work this thing out, be able to turn it around and play really solid football. But as you mentioned, only a pair of teams made the playoffs this time around. I do believe that we have more playoff teams in the county here this year. We might see 2 tonight. You might hear 2 tonight right here on Fox Sports 102.9. Both Southside and Hokes Bluff, they'll be vying for those playoff positions in their representative states.
The Alabama Sports Writers Association Top 10 has come out, and we'll start in Class 1A and kind of move through this. Just kind of highlight our Northeast Alabama teams. Brantley was number 1 in Class 1A with 15 of the votes. Spring Garden number 2. They got the win last Thursday night over Sandrock. They're 1-0. They got 3 first-place votes, but they sit at number 2. And again, this could be kind of Spring Garden. They're back at 1A. This could be here. They make some noise.
They certainly can, and I expect them to be one of the best, if not the best team in the North. Of course, Decatur Heritage will have a lot to say about that. We'll also hear from Cedar Bluff, I'm pretty sure, before it's all said and done. But to me, Spring Garden, they came out with the same energy, the same punch that they did in their 2 years, and their few years in Class 2A, and I expect the exact same thing. And what a win there in Game 1, putting up 40 points. And I expect that to keep going on. In 1A, we always talk about the South, but in the North, I think Spring Garden can make some noise.
Yep, so Spring Garden, number 2, another local team, that is Cedar Bluff. They are 1-0, and so they get the win over Winterboro. They are number 8 there in the Class 1A top 10. Class 2A, you got 5. They've yet to play a game. They had a jamboree with Piedmont on Friday night. But they will begin play this week. But they sit atop their number 1 because they're coming down from 3A,
right,
but still one of the best teams in the state.
And considering what they did in 3A, I'm pretty sure the pollsters were like, what? And there's not that huge of a difference between 3A and 2A, but considering the fact that they dominated 2A when they were there, then they went to 3A and went 27-2. and then they come back to 2A. That just shows you the respect the pollsters have, and I think deservedly so, for the Red Devils, who will get their season underway this week.
Yep. So Fife number 1 there in Class 2A. Clark County 2, Lynette 3, Ayrton 4, Highland Home 5, Aliceville 6, GW Long 7, Pisgah 8, JU Blackshear 9, and BB Colmer number 10 there in Class 2A. Moving to Class 3A, Piedmont again yet to play a game. Defending state champs. They are number 1 in 3A.
Yeah, and they were going to be unanimous. Gordo ended up sneaking out one of the votes after winning their game last week, but we expect Piedmont. We talked about Fife just a minute ago. Piedmont and Fife played a jamboree last week. It sounds like from everybody who was there, who saw some of the action, it was beneficial for both teams to be able to get out and do it. Keep in mind, Piedmont does return their starting quarterback in Jack Hayes, but they lost a lot of weapons over there. So Coach Steve Smith, I think this will be a really good test for Coach Steve Smith, his to be a really good platform, a good canvas for his ability, his art of coaching. He's able to scheme guys up. He's able to create, number one, incredible schemes just in general, but put his guys in the best positions to win. Of course, when you have a single caller like Jack, you're going to be in almost every ball game. And I think for this offense and the coaching staff just in general, this will be a little different team than we've seen from before, but I expect them to be at or near number 1 the entire season.
Yep, so 3A is Piedmont 1, Gordo 2, St. James, Mobile Christian, Alabama Christian, Mars Hill Bible, Winfield, Opp, and the Sacs Wildcats, number 9, Flomaton 10. But Jonathan Miller and Sacs 1-0 with a big win over the Ohanchee Indians to get Sacs there at number 9.
We talked about questions. Sacs had so many questions going into this year. Their team last year was just laced with seniors everywhere, where they do have a lot of talent coming back as that offensive line. I think 4 returning starters from the O-line, 3 guys that started the whole year, and I think 1 guy that got a lot of starting time last year. And everybody else is basically new. They didn't even know who their starting quarterback was going to be going into the year. They knew that the 2, 3, 4 guys can get the reps there, but they didn't know who the number 1 guy would be. And that's, I think, something that's still going to be a work in motion as they go along. But to beat a really good Ohatchee team the way that they did, put up 40-plus points on them, I think like everybody talks about, Sacs might be down because they lost a lot. And then here comes Jonathan Miller and the Wildcats with a nice, impressive win in week 1.
Yes, absolutely. So moving now to Class 4A, I've got Montgomery Catholic at 1, Handley 2, Andalusia 3, Jacksonville 4, Northside 5, Aniana 6, Jackson 7, Etowah 8, Anniston 9, Montgomery Academy 10. So Northeast Alabama teams, you got Jacksonville at 4, Aniana at 6, Etowah at 8, and Anniston at 9. All of those teams 1-0 heading into week 1.
To me, 4A and 5A, especially 4A, will be the most fascinating watch because I don't think there's much difference at all between number 1 Montgomery Catholic and number 9 and even number 10 Montgomery Academy. I think that any one of these teams can beat any one of these teams on any given Friday night. To me, the gap between the number 1, number 2, number 3 teams in most classifications, and then the rest of the top 10, or maybe if you were extended past that to other teams that are receiving votes, the gap is relatively large. I think in 4A, it is razor tight. And so this will be a really fun classification to watch all year.
Yes, it will be. They're in Class 4A. Class 5A, you've got UMS Wright 1, Viger 2, Ramsey 3, Pleasant Grove 4, Alexandria 5, Leeds 6, Gulf Shore 7, Gunnersville 8, Central Clay County 9, and Moody 10. Alexandria will play their first game coming up tomorrow night against Jacksonville, but you've got Gunnersville, got a big win over Southside, and Moody as well, 1-0 there.
Yeah, this is another really interesting classification to watch as the year goes along. How about tomorrow's matchup between Alexandria and Jacksonville? That's now a top 5 matchup according to the latest polls. And a top 5 matchup, of course, 5 in Class 5A and number 4 in Class 4A. So it'll be easy to remember as we dive into tomorrow night. But yeah, once again, 4A and 5A, a lot of representation here in this area of teams that I believe that number 1 will be in the rankings for most, if not all, the entire year, but also vie for state championships at the end.
So that was Class 5A. Here's Class 6A. You got Clay Chalkville 1, Mountain Brook 2, Saraland 3, Hillcrest Tuscaloosa 4, Gardendale 5, Pinson Valley 6, Briarwood 7, Theodore 8, Pike Road 9, and Hueytown 10. And in 7A, you've got Central Phoenix City 1, Auburn 2 after the win over Hoover on Friday, Thompson 3, Fairhope 4, Hoover 5, Hewitt Trustful 6, Enterprise 7, Opelika 8, James Clemens 9, and Prattville 10. It's not often you see Thompson and Hoover with an 0-1 there to start the season.
You don't, and it kind of it's good credit to the kind of teams that they played in week 1. Obviously, Thompson going to Buford, Georgia, and then with Hoover playing a really good Auburn football team. You don't see that necessarily from these two teams, but I think that the balance of power in Class 7A, I'm not saying that it shifted. I'm not saying that it's going to completely shift. I do think, though, that the gap between the North and the South is tightening. And you're seeing it with two teams, at Central Phoenix City and Auburn, which, ironically, Central Phoenix City and Auburn are relatively close together as far as geography goes. And then Thompson and Hoover are relatively close together as far as geography goes as well. Those four teams, I think, won't be a bit surprised to see those four teams being the four teams that are in it at the end. But Fairhope will have a lot to say about that. They won in dramatic fashion, had a pick six, a walk-off pick six. Might be the first time I've ever seen that in all of football. Yeah. Walk-off pick six to knock off Spanish Fort in their first game of the season. But yeah, you don't normally see a Thompson and Hoover 0-1, but that's credit to the teams that they played in week 1 of the season. And how about Clay Chalkville, the only unanimous number 1 team there in Class 6A, all 21 first place votes. And that's after a really impressive win over Briarwood, who stays in the top 10. So it shows you just how good Briarwood is. But Clay Chalkville absolutely blew them out last week. And I think, to me, of all the scores that were the most impressive, that was the most impressive one, 48-0, as the Cougars now hunt for a second straight state championship.
There you go. So that is the Alabama Sports Writers Association poll for this week. We'll talk some more high school football coming up next as Jacob Kelly, head coach of the Cherokee County Warriors, joins us here on WKXX Live coming up next.
There was like lakes on both sidelines. It was a natural turf over there, which they had an outstanding. They do a great job of keeping their field up. But when you get that amount of rain and there's lakes all over the place, it makes it tough. There's not a lot of preparation. You can do as much wet ball drill as you want. And our managers did a good job of managing and keeping a dry ball, or at least as good as you can get in there. But to come out of there with a victory in our week one, our first week as a real game, was good. I mean, they're a big physical team. I mean, they might end up actually being the biggest team that we see. I mean, they were pretty big up front, especially in the front seven on defense. And, we got a ton that we got to work on fixing ourselves. But like I said, I think perseverance was the biggest thing. We played pretty physical, but we held them under 100 yards. I think they had 76 total yards, and it really was 2 busted plays from our defensive alignment. And other than that, we were pretty much lights out. We forced a couple turnovers. And the biggest thing with us is do our job, eliminating the penalties and turnovers, and playing extremely physical. And usually when we do that, we have a good shot at winning.
For sure. Coach, the defense will have their hands full this week, obviously, with the defending 3A state champions in with the Piedmont Bulldogs, a game there with your rivals up Highway 9. First off, if you could speak to this game in 2 different ways. Number one, the overall rivalry, and then this year's Piedmont team and some of the things, the overall rivalry, and then this year's Piedmont team and some of the things that you're preparing for as you get ready for them tomorrow.
Well, I mean, it is one of the state's longest rivalries, and being that the 2 communities are so tied up and intertwined with each other, we've got a ton of people, from this community and from that community that it's like Auburn, Alabama. I mean, it's bragging rights 365 days a year. The fact that Coach Smith played for Coach Johnson, graduated from here, family lives here, he grew up here, played here. And truly, after this game, I mean, I really do. He'll tell you he roots for us as long as they're not playing. And so, it's a great non-region game for us. It gives us a tremendous look in the non-region schedule. Both communities support each other financially, so whether it's there or here, we get a great draw from our fan bases that allows us to pay the bills. That's another good thing. We're fortunate enough to have that game here. We went over there last year, and the biggest thing with our guys is in the last 12 years, I think we haven't had a lot of success. So how much of it is mental and how much of it is just us doing our job? And so if the moment for our guys in the past becomes too big, then we don't execute very well. And it's as simple as our guys doing what they're coached to do and playing our brand of ball to our standard. And that's really what we got to narrow it down to. And so all the external factors are irrelevant. All the radio shows that I'm doing right now, and the pick'ems and the experts and the story writers on the preface of the game. I mean, all that stuff is great. It builds up the draw of the game and the communities and whatnot. But when the ball's put down, it's about execution and doing the things that we need to do to win, not just necessarily against that bunch, but any bunch we face. And so that's what we've got to do. We got to do a better job of just locking in and playing, doing what we're coached to do, and being physical, eliminating things that get you beat. And that's what we're hoping to do tomorrow night.
We're talking with Cherokee County head coach Jacob Kelly this afternoon. And Coach, I know you've got a large junior and sophomore class with only 10 seniors. So, some guys you would consider younger guys on your team in your starting lineup. You mentioned a really big team in Model, Georgia. You're playing Piedmont this week in the defending 3A state champs. How important is it for these guys these juniors and seniors to play these teams to start ahead of what's going to be a tough region schedule?
Well, I mean, that's why we schedule games in the non-region that we feel like are going to prepare us for the region. And winning is big in our kids' psyche, and it was very, because when I first got here, we didn't play some of the same teams, and so we kind of inherited the schedule that was made the year before, and so you want to have games that are going to prepare you for your region, and I feel like the ones that we got this year with Model and Piedmont and Mumford and Fort Payne are going to do just that. They're going to prepare us for those games, and hopefully, fortunate enough, if we're fortunate enough to make the playoffs, prepare us for those games as well.
For sure. Coach Kelly, you're now entering your fourth season, meaning that everybody that was a freshman when you got there, they've been underneath your leadership, your coaching staff's leadership, your discipline, their entire high school careers at least. What are some of the things that you've learned about the community and about this football team? Some of the things that you've implemented over the last 4 years that you've seen, obviously on paper, that you can see the marked improvement from year to year. But what are some of the things that you might see that we don't see if we just looking at scores and yardages and all the kind of black and white things? Some of the things that you see on the inside.
Well, coming into it, you kind of got to evaluate what you have as far as talent wise, as far as skill wise, what type of players they are, and what kind of culture, where the culture's at. And so coming in year one, weight room was big emphasis, changing up maybe what they've done in the past to what I wanted out of the weight room. And so over the course of 3 years, we just redid the entire weight room this off season. And then, building a culture of player accountability. And one thing I can say about this bunch is they hold each other accountable. They know when things are not going the right way, the way we need to play, holding each other accountable on the field. And so that's probably the biggest change. Year one, everything had to be on the whistle. I had to self-drive everything. There was no cruise control. Everything was reliant on what I fed them. And so now they know how to go about business. They know how to go to work. They know how the expectations are in the weight room and practice in the classroom. And they know that when they step out of line, there's going to be consequences. And, it's just one of those things. Year four, these kids were in the 8th grade when I first got here. There was only about 7 of them that were out. We got a few more out, and so we're here their senior year. And it's a special group. It's a fun bunch to coach. Like I said, they have bought into everything that we've done, tried to preach, tried to build. And, the community, I feel like, is behind these guys. They're proud of the guys' hard work. And a lot of times they don't know until they show up on a Friday in the fall and be like, man, good Lord, these guys have gotten bigger. They've got, who is that? If you look at some of these guys as 8th graders and freshmen and sophomores, their bodies have changed, and strictly because of the weight room program and them busting their tails in there and preparing for what they need to be during football season. And so anyway, I know they're excited about the year. They've had a great off season. They've had a great summer. We've had a good scrimmage. We started the year off, and so now we're here for tomorrow night. And I feel like they're ready to go.
Coach Jacob Kelly, he's the head coach of the Cherokee County Warriors. They will be in action tomorrow night against the Piedmont Bulldogs. Coach, really appreciate you coming on with us, taking some time. I know y'all be finishing up your game prep, but thanks for taking a few minutes with us, and we'll talk to you again soon.
Thank y'all for having me.
Thank you. Jacob Kelly, head football coach of the Cherokee County Warriors, joining us on the All-American HVAC Service Hotline. And again, a great win for them last week. They're going to have their hands full tomorrow night with Piedmont, but with a major junior and sophomore class, I mean, it's considered a younger team, but they're going to be a good football team.
They lost a lot of players last year to graduation. Lost a lot of key contributors, and really it was not just on one side of the ball; it's both sides of the ball. You had C.J. Gresham, who was a great DB. Had Damian Ramsey, who was just labeled as an athlete. They put him everywhere. Both those guys were all state players. Daniel Majo was a place kicker, was an all-state player as well as Jay Watts on the offensive line. And so they graduated a lot of guys that come back with a bit of a void in this year's senior class as far as the numbers go, but a really young team that got a lot of reps last year. And you're seeing the marked improvement. When he first got there, no playoffs. Second year, first round of the playoffs. Last year, second round of the playoffs. And who they lost in the second round was Viger, who ended up winning the 4A state championship. Yeah. And so you have a situation, in my opinion, that you have a team that is ascending, and he mentioned it. They are taking now personal accountability. They are carrying his message. He's not having to do the whole thing. He's not having to whip everybody into shape, for lack of a better term. He is just being able to lay down that foundation and say, hey, this is what our standard is, and then expecting the older guys to do it. Last year, they were able to do it with the guys that graduated, and it looks like this year he's counting on that small senior class and a lot of those young players that you mentioned.
Yeah. So Cherokee County and Piedmont tomorrow night, big rivalry game. You get a lot of those in this time of the year, these rivalry games. We'll look at kind of the layout of what week 1 of the high school football season looks like as week 0 is in the rear view. So we'll do that when we come back here on WKXX Live here on this Thursday afternoon. Welcome back in WKXX Live Thursday afternoon. Chase and Gerhard with you until 4 o'clock. And we've got Hoax Bluff High School football coming up tonight, 6:30 for the countdown to kickoff show. And at 7 o'clock, Hoax Bluff and Southside will kick it off there at Mike Robertson Stadium in Hoax Bluff as a big Etowah County rivalry game there. So I know lots of folks will be there ready to watch that one. You can listen to it while you're at the game right here on Fox Sports 102.9. There's been kind of some rain in the forecast today. It should be out by game time. So come on out and enjoy some high school football and listen to it right here on Fox Sports 102.9. Big week of week one. Week 0 is last week. Not to confuse you as we're saying week 1.
Right.
Some games last week. Week 0 going on. So week 0 was last week. This is week 1 of the high school football season. So you got 11 weeks to play 10 games is what that means. But we're going to kind of spotlight some games that stood out to us as we're looking at the schedule for week 1 games. I've got a couple of Marshall County games that really stick out to me. One of those is the backyard brawl, Albertville and Boaz. It's like the 83rd meeting of these two teams. Big, I mean, right down the street from each other,
right?
Really. So both of them coming off of a loss last week. So I think that could be a really good matchup here in week 1.
Yeah, I agree with you. And anytime you have these rivalry games, just like we talked about with Coach Kelly with Piedmont and Cherokee County, it does two things. It's a rivalry game that does really well for the community, helps bolster both economies of the county and of just the communities in general. But at the same time, it's a great test as they move forward. So it really works out for their football teams as well. It's not just something that you're doing just to create a nice little gate, even though it does both.
Another matchup involving DeKalb County schools is Fife at Geraldine.
Yeah.
Now, last year, Fife had the winning streak going on, and it was Geraldine that ended it, beating Fife in snapping that 51-game winning streak last season. As Geraldine got a big win over Coosa Christian last week, so they've got going in the right direction. Fife, this is their first game of the season. But it was Geraldine walking away with a 20-19 win last season. I think this could be a good one.
I remember when I first heard that score, and my jaw was on the floor. And I think most people were like that because they were, just a few games away from breaking the state's all-time winning streak of 55 games set by Clay County back in the day. And I think they were at, I had to go back and check, I think they were at 52, Fife was, 51, 52, so somewhere in there, getting close to that 55-game mark that was set by Clay County. And then I was thinking, most people were, I'm sure, just hearing a score, not at the game. So just hearing a score, they were like, well, something happened, something fluky happened. But then you go back and you talk to people who were there, you go back and watch it. There was nothing fluky about it. Like Geraldine lined up and they beat Fife. And so now, obviously coming into 2A, I think that there is going to be some revenge factor there for the Red Devils. And obviously Geraldine flying high, and they got a nice win last week, and they want to keep the ball rolling.
So that should be a good one. Looking at some other week 1 games, of course, we got Southside and Hoax Bluff tonight. We talked about that one at the beginning. Big Etowah County rivalry game. Also tonight, Sand Rock at Cedar Bluff. A couple of Cherokee County teams.
Right.
I mean, that's a big rivalry game there.
Yeah, it is. And obviously, he had Cedar Bluff had a really nice win last week over Winterboro. A nice kind of reunion game for Coach Beckett, going back and taking on a Winterboro team that he led to a lot of prominence. And now Winterboro's got a really good coach in Skylar Mansfield. And so to see these county matchups, being able not only to take shape, but also matter at this stage is really solid.
Looking at some other week 1 games in high school football, Jacksonville at Alexandria. We mentioned that one earlier. Alexandria was preseason ranked 5. They've stayed in that position, not playing a game. Jacksonville, though, led by quarterback Jim Ogle, they got a big win over Boaz last week. A lot of talk around Jacksonville. Alexandria, they're missing some pieces from last year, graduating some off, but I think this could be a really good Calhoun County matchup.
Yeah, I did too. And I think that obviously, going back to last year, Alexandria had one of the better teams in the state. Coach Todd Ginn has done a fantastic job in his time there in Death Valley. To me, this game kind of comes down to is Jacksonville can Jacksonville show, number one, that this quarterback is for real. This would be a really good test for Jim Ogle against this defense, and to find out the way that Coach Ginn and the Valley Cubs scheme up against Jacksonville, not just Ogle, but the entire offensive unit, but because that offensive unit is really solid. That wide receiver group, I think, will be really big. And then for Alexandria, there's a lot of changes there up front. There's some guys that are returning. Antonio Ross is back for them, a nice playmaker, but they lost Javez McGee and a lot of other guys that were able to make plays, not just last year, but in the years before. So can they scheme up a way? Because Alexandria, to me, will also look a little bit different than the way they did last year. So for Jacksonville, they come back, I think 4 or 5 offensive linemen returning from last year. So they could pass the ball, obviously. They could play on the outside. So I won't be surprised to see a high-scoring game with teams getting up and down the field. Or if they want to run the ball and play a short, tighter game, running the football, Alexandria, I'm sure, will be able to do that well, like they always have. And Jacksonville could do that as well. So to me, this is a great matchup as far as rivalries go, and as far as what both teams will look like, as both teams are now in the top 5 of their respective polls.
So what other games, Gerhard, stick out to you getting ready for week 1?
Yeah, I have 2 sets of games here, kind of 2 different columns, and one's a local column and one's the statewide column. On the local column, you actually hit on some of the games I was going to. Cedar Bluff and Sandrock is a great one in Fife and Geraldine. Another kind of sneaky one is BB Comer and Childersburg. BB Comer is a team that I think, when you look back at their history, and I'm not talking about like in the 1950s, 60s, 70s. I'm just talking about in the last 10 years. This is a team that was barely able to dress enough players to play a full season. And now here they are. They're a top 10 team. A lot of people are high on this team. They're back, I think, with a really solid foundation of who they are. And Coach Adam Fawcett has done a fantastic job with them. Childersburg comes in, I think, really confident. And they're rebuilding. They're building back from trying to get back to where they were a few years ago. And I think it's a really good matchup for BB Comer. It's another one of those inter-county matchups as well there in Talladega County. Meanwhile, for the Anniston Bulldogs, Coach Greg Watkins hit on this earlier this past week. Georgia and Alabama, this rivalry, not the college Georgia and Alabama, even though that's been a national rivalry that determines national championships. If you go to the high school side, Georgia's got the best of Alabama in a lot of these matchups, these cross-state matchups. Well, Anniston has a chance to get Alabama another win as they take on a really solid Villa Rica, Georgia team. So we'll have those matchups as far as local games are concerned. And then as far as statewide games, how about number 4 Leroy out of Class 1A taking on Clark County, the number 2 team right now out of Class 2A, and Clark County ended up winning the state championship there. So a really nice matchup in the kind of the smaller division schools. St. James out of Class 3A will take on Hanley, the number 2 team out of Class 4A. So that's another kind of like Jacksonville and Alexandria. 2 teams in the top 5 of different classifications facing off against one another. Montgomery Catholic will play against Alabama Christian, another top 5 matchup between interclass teams. Montgomery Catholic, the number 1 team in 4A, and Alabama Christian, the number 5 team in Class 4A. So interesting matchup there. And then the final one, number 1 team out of Class 6A, Clay Chalkville, taking the number 10 team out of Class 6A, Hueytown. A lot of talent on the field there, a lot of explosive players for both sides. So I expect a really solid game there over at Hueytown as Clay Chalkville makes that trip over.
Really good high school football games here in week 1 of the season. And we've got more high school football talk to come. But we're going to dive into hour number 2 on the other side of this break. Stick around here on Fox Sports 102.9.
Get ready for Chase Robinson
He has got to be a player they can rely on in big situations.
and Gerhard Mathangani
Has the trust of his team. Sounds like the makeup of his team is in a really good space, and I believe that's because of the culture he's curated down there.
for WKXX Live. These guys have you covered from preps to pros and everything in between. Now, let's go inside the Fox Sports 102.9 studio with Chase and Gerhard for WKXX Live.
Hour number 2 on a Thursday afternoon. Welcome in. Chase Robinson here along with Gerhard Mathangani as we have been talking lots of high school football today as we get ready to head into week 1 of the high school football season as week 0 in the rearview mirror. We're going to talk with now the head football coach of the Sardis Lions. He joins us on the All-American HVAC Service Hotline. Coach Chris Stevenson joining us. Coach, appreciate your time this afternoon. How are you doing?
Outstanding. How you guys?
Doing great. Glad to have you on. And I know it started off the season of 2022 last week and started off with a win, 16-14 over DAR. And I know always a great way to start the season with a win there. Talk about kind of some things you learned about your guys as it was your first time on the sidelines there with the Sardis Lions.
Well, I learned that if I have another first half start like that, I won't be here long. That I can tell you. No, we just made every mistake in the book and helped them a lot, and you know, it was just that one of those first halves when you think, gosh, all these years of coaching, I surely can do a better job than that. But it was what an atmosphere. You know, the place was full and everybody was going crazy and students, you know, wild, and it was an interesting experience to say the least. And the way our kids responded in the second half was just remarkable. I mean, we ended up rolling up over 350 yards of offense in the second half alone.
Coach, one of the things that I find really interesting about this move is that Sardis is a really proud program. As you mentioned, they packed out the place. They really love their football over there, but they'd fallen on hard times. They were going into last week's game. They were 1-19 over the last 2 years. What did that win have you sensed? I know you're a coach and you just kind of go from one thing to the next, but what have you sensed as far as from a community standpoint that win has done to help galvanize this program and continue to move it forward from a positive mentality standpoint?
Well, it's I told the kids after, and coaches and everybody that could listen around me after the game that this is what everybody needed. You know, myself, the coaches, the players, the community, the county, just on and on and on. Everything associated with Sardis in this football program, and the locker room was nuts. I mean, it was like we had won the third round of the playoffs, kind of thing, And I said, look, you know, you got to get used to winning because that's what we're going to do here. And I mean, and you can tell they hadn't won in a while by the way they acted. And that may have explained kind of the first half. But this community, they rolled the trees. I didn't know they even did that here. I felt like I was back home at Auburn, you know. But 11:30 at night, I'm trying to leave, and they're rolling the tree. So great stuff, though. Just wonderful win for the program, and just move on to New Hope and try to make it 2 in a row.
Yeah, so you've got New Hope coming up tomorrow night, another home game there at Sardis. What's the preparation been like for New Hope as you get ready for tomorrow night?
Well, I'll tell you, they on film, you know, they look the part. You know, they're big and they're strong and they're pretty disciplined, and we can't play a half of football and win the ball game. And that's just all there is to it, unless we can put up 500 yards of offense in the half. But we've got to play a complete game, and we are playing up there. And you know, we played Pennington on the road and did okay. It seems like home's a little better to us, but they'll definitely be a challenge. They've got some athletes, and they're a big football team.
For sure. Coach Stevenson of Sardis High School joins us here. Coach, for those who didn't get a chance to see your team play last week, and you don't have to give away the playbook for what you're going to do this week, but what are some of the elements of what this football team tries to do from an offensive standpoint Obviously, last week it worked. You said being able to get up over 350 yards there of offense. What are some of the things, the things that you are implementing with this year's unit offensively?
Well, it's establishing the line of scrimmage and the ability to run the football, and that's what I've been, I guess, known for. If I've known for anything over the years, is that, I'm going to try to shove it down your throat or at least get off the edge. and we do mix it up too. But they gave us the inside run last week, and of course we took full advantage of it. But I'm naturally going to try to run the ball first and kind of impose the will, if that's
sure,
if I'm allowed to say that. But and then it's just to keep people off balance. Once we get the run going, start slipping in throws and that kind of stuff. But it's amazing how these kids have bought into that. We don't have the kids to run spread and stuff like that. We just don't. This isn't Thompson, Hoover, Vestavia, those schools, and so we just line up and get after you and have fun doing it.
Who are some guys you've seen step up, maybe leading up to your first game last week, and then maybe some guys who stepped up and surprised you in the game last week?
Well, Blaze Gerhard's no surprise at all. He's our quarterback. He's built more like a running back, and in my system, that's perfect. That's what you're going to be anyway. Derek Tarvin did a phenomenal job. He's fullback, did a great job blocking. Gage Garner, the center, is a phenomenal center. His snaps were on point. Really surprised me the way he snapped and the way he blocked. Defensively, no surprises. You see them every day in practice. They fly around and they hit people. But Luke Martin and Luke and Levi Martin, the brothers, they're young and not as experienced, but I tell you what, when the lights come on, it looks like they've been playing 15 years, and I haven't really seen that yet until the other night, and boy, it showed.
For sure. Coach Stevenson of Sardis High School joining us. Coach, a big picture, what were some of the things that intrigued you about coming back to Alabama? You had a long, successful career in the state of Florida, but you were able to make your way back here to the heart of Dixie. What were some of the things that you wanted to do with your career as you took the job there at Sardis?
Retire. That's what I want to do. No, really. That is a goal, actually. It was to get back to North Alabama, where I'm from, and granted, it's on the west side of the state, but it's ultimately to get to a school with a tradition like Sardis, with a family atmosphere like Sardis. I mean, this is what Auburn feels like. This is what, some of these teams like Hoover and all feel like. It's that deep family, deep faith, small town. We're going to shut all the lights off. I had to run to the store real quick before the game, and I left. I couldn't get back to the stadium. They shut the street off.
Wow.
So I thought I was about to walk back. But anyway, but that's what I came back for. Florida doesn't do this. This is not a Florida thing. People, always say, "Oh, the football's better in Florida, or it's better in Texas, or it's better in California." No, it's not. The best high school football I've seen is in the state of Alabama, and it's the passion, and you've got it right here, and it's an amazing place, and they better bury me here.
Chris Stevenson, head football coach of the Sardis Lions, joining us here on WKXX Live. And, Coach, congratulations on the win last week. Looking forward to keeping up with the Lions this week and for the rest of the season. Appreciate you taking some time and joining us this afternoon, and we'll do it again real soon.
Sounds great. Gladly, guys. Appreciate it. Y'all take care.
Thanks, Coach.
Thanks, Coach.
Chris Stevenson, head football coach of the Sardis Lions, 1-0 Sardis Lions.
Yeah, and I think it can't be understated how far a win goes to start off your career at a program.
Yeah.
Really anywhere. It could be a place that's won several state championships in a row, or it's a place like Sardis that has fallen on some hard times. But it's good to hear that the community has backed them. I mean, there's a lot of places where you go 0-10 and 1-9 in the last 2 years. That's 1-19. A lot of times the community will be like, you know what? I want to find something else to do with my Friday night. Go to a movie, go bowl, go on a date. Let's do something else for Friday. They don't do that there in Sardis, and he mentioned that. And for a guy as well traveled as he is, that he has seen so much high school football everywhere, it's kind of a pat on the back for you high school football fans in the state of Alabama. Hey, you helped create the best atmosphere in all of high school athletics throughout the country. And he's not the first to say it, but he's the latest to say it in a guy that's been well traveled. And to see that for Sardis and to see them get the win, it kind of culminates, I think, a lot of what high school football is about here in the state.
You were right, and I know we're biased a little bit, but I do think high school football in the state of Alabama is the best in the country, no doubt.
Yeah, no doubt about it. And obviously, people are going to talk about, hey, how many top recruits do you have on three or rivals or whatever, and the numbers might not be there, even though this year the numbers probably will be there because this year's a really deep class as far as Division I athletes are concerned. But everybody talks about, the players. I think the quality of players might be a step up in Georgia or Louisiana, but the overall aspect of high school sports, high school athletics, high school football especially, it doesn't get beat here. But you mentioned it. We are biased, but it's great to hear somebody who just left a state where you don't have to even recruit outside of your state if you're Miami, Florida State, or FSU.
Yeah.
And for him to say that, I think it adds a bit more of credence.
We appreciate Coach Chris Stevenson for joining us with the Sardis Lions as they prep for a New Hope tomorrow night there in week 1 of the high school football season. We'll take a break here, come back, get into a little NFL coming up. We'll talk Alabama football, Braves baseball, may get to a little JSU preview in their game a couple days away. We'll do all of that as we continue here on WKXX Live on a Thursday afternoon, Fox Sports 102.9.
Being an Army Ranger
Fox Sports 102.9 WKXX Live. Want to remind you we're brought to you in part by Frank's Roofing. Our studio developed a leak, and we called Frank. The estimate was free. The price was fair. His crew was on it. They got the job done. So do what we did. Trust Frank's Roofing for your shingle, metal, or flat roof repair or replacement. Call 256-458-8531. That is 256-458-8531 for a free estimate. That is Frank's Roofing. Jacksonville State football gets going this Saturday, week 0 of the college football season. And Jacksonville State, 2:30 ESPN. That's a pretty prime spot for Jacksonville State and Stephen F. Austin.
That's certainly right. And the kicking off of the Rich Rodriguez era, he obviously has made a name for himself at some of the top places in all of college football, places like Michigan and West Virginia and Arizona. And so to have a guy with that kind of name now be leading Jacksonville State in its final year of the FCS, going into the FBS. It's a really exciting time for Jacksonville State and taking on a really good opponent in Stephen F. Austin, who they had their name recognition of their own on the FCS level. And so I think it's a really good matchup as they meet once again. And JSU, once again, I think this is so smart, playing earlier than everybody else. That way you don't get lost in the shuffle, playing earlier than most of the Power Five. And getting out ahead of everybody else in the state as well, playing in the FCS kickoff.
You know, I want to get to the football game in just a second. But earlier in the week at the Tuesday press conference with Coach Richrod, and he made some comments. My phone starts. I got to start getting texts and stuff from people with the video of Coach Rodriguez claiming that Stephen F. Austin allegedly maybe some spy work on the part of Stephen F. Austin of maybe some cameras at practice recently,
right?
Some guys at spring games. Very interesting accusations. One that I would have maybe understood in 1999, you know,
right.
So a high school game,
right?
Really caught me off guard.
Yeah, it did me as well. And I won't lie, the very first I thought of it, because I was like you, the text started coming in. I heard some of the press conference earlier that day, but I didn't get to that part where he was basically saying that, you know, Stephen F. Austin, we believe that Stephen F. Austin was spying on us. And you mentioned it with all that we have today, as far as just being able to document all this information and be able to go out and get some scouting report stuff done. You wouldn't necessarily expect to see that. I think the last major time we've heard about this was Spygate with the New England Patriots, 15 years ago, 20 years ago, somewhere in there. And so, to have this all kind of come up again was really interesting. In this kind of situation with the kickoff of the FCS. And like I said, the first place my mind went, not to get cynical, but the first place my mind went was like, maybe it a little drums up some hype for the game. Yeah. Because if you just cloud it under, we think it was them, we don't know. Oh, well, then you can always hide under we just said we thought, we don't know. If they weren't wearing a Stephen F. Austin shirt or whatever, then you really don't know. And I'm not saying that that's the case. That's just the first thing that came to my mind. But it does create a little bit more intrigue, a little bit more drama. And I think there will be some more eyes that might not have otherwise watched this game that will watch this game now.
Yeah, so here is Coach Richrod and his comments on Tuesday.
Pretty good source was true that they had a couple staff members at our spring game, which is kind of like that's not really supposed to happen. But no, we're making plans accordingly. If they're over there thinking they have our plays or what have you, or signals or something like that, we've changed things since the spring. Then we caught somebody trying to film something the other day, and first my daughter caught him, Raquel saw him, and then we caught him again, saw him, peering through there with his camera, and I sent the biggest guy in our program, crew, one of our assistant strength coaches. He's about like 6'7", 350, probably benches like 1,000 pounds or something. Sent him up to bleachers to run him out, and that guy disappeared pretty quick.
So that was Coach Rich Rodriguez, his comments there, alleging Stephen F. Austin to be spying on the Gamecocks. I'm glad he's in Jacksonville,
Yeah, I mean, if nothing else, this creates for some great storylines, some great fodder as we talk about it. But he's not a coach that for the most part, just kind of gives you the humdrum coaching talking points. And a lot of coaches do, and it's just basically to save the brand or whatever. We've heard from now 2 different coaches that I think could do completely the opposite. On the high school level, Coach Stevenson, he's very blunt, very honest about his answers. And then Coach Rich Rodriguez, who will tell you exactly what he's thinking. And for the most part, if they have a situation like this, most coaches either would sweep it under the rug or just call the coach up just in general. But the fact that he put this out there not for the public, which the public should know, but he put this out there for Stephen F. Austin to know, like, hey, just in case it was you, and it might not be them. Let's just say it's somebody else on the schedule, or just a different opponent or whoever. This is out there for everybody to understand that, hey, JSU will do things a little bit differently. By the way, I've seen that crew guy. He's huge. He is a monster. And 1,000 pounds is probably undershooting it a bit. He is a beast. And so, it's interesting talking points, interesting fodder. I don't know how far it goes into the game because, like he said, they've changed up their signals and whatnot. But it'll be interesting to see the pregame talk between the coaches or lack thereof, and what happens postgame as well on Saturday.
Yes, and this has become, like you said, a national story. I'm reading articles on Sports Illustrated.
Yeah.
I was listening to a sports radio station in Atlanta, and they're talking about Rich Rod. So this has made the rounds there, as I'm sure he wanted it to.
Yeah,
and so. We'll see. That will be an interesting pregame handshake
for sure.
If there is one.
Yeah, if there is one, I think that's a good qualifier. If this was like any other place where it's a coach that doesn't have the name recognition, I think this kind of gets talked about in those circles. But because Rich Rod has coached at the Big House, and he's in the Michigan-Ohio State game, at West Virginia, at Arizona. He's been at the Power 5 level. He's got the name recognition. And then not to mention the fact that, he was considered for the Alabama job before Coach Saban got it as well. So, he intertwines with this state in a lot of ways, and his name resonates across the country. The fact that he is saying it, I think that adds to it too. So it's kind of a perfect melding of so many things. Perfect melding of Coach Rich Rodriguez's first game. Perfect melding of the fact that it is Coach Rich Rodriguez. Perfect marriage to the fact that it's Stephen F. Austin, one of the better teams out of the FCS.
Yeah.
Spying on the first-year head coach for the FCS program and their last year FCS as they go into FBS. All these, and the fact that they're playing. And this is not a story if it's, week 5. The fact that it's, we're starving for stuff. We're starving for college football information right now. I think to me it just adds a lot more intrigue to it.
It sure does. One interesting part of the game part of this game, though, is who's going to be the quarterback for Jacksonville State. I mean, we're at the point now, I think that, and he alluded to this, that he's used multiple quarterbacks before, and I don't think we should be surprised if we see that. But I'm curious to see who walks out there for the first snap of the game for Jacksonville State on offense.
Yeah, same here, and I think that he will keep that under the cuff for a long time, and I think that we'll be able to see both quarterbacks, both Zion Webb as well as Aaron McLaughlin, the transfer. I think we'll see both of those guys in. If you talk to Mike Paris the other day, and even he didn't know. He was just kind of trying to read the tea leaves from what he's seen at practice. I know you've been at practice a couple of times as well, and it looks like they've been switching out. They're probably a little bit closer right now. They'll be closer tomorrow to finding out who will take the first snap. But just because they take the first snap doesn't mean they'll take the most snaps. They might split it up evenly. We might see 100% one way, 100% the other way. They might just try to keep Stephen F. Austin, guessing, and then also doing their own evaluation as well. So seeing how they perform, under the live lights. So I'm really interested to find out, about the offense in general, because this offense is so quarterback centric.
Yeah.
And then at the same time, who actually does take most of those snaps.
So there you go. Jacksonville State, Stephen F. Austin this Saturday. Airtime will be 1:30 here on Fox Sports 102.9. Kickoff at 2:30. It's on ESPN, but of course we are your home for Jacksonville State football here on Fox Sports 102.9. We'll grab a break here. Want to get to some NFL. A couple of, actually several former Alabama players going to battle this week in joint practice there in the NFL preseason. We will get to that coming up next.
The
See how we help warriors combat stigma at woundedwarriorproject.org/combat stigma.
Employment First strives to include people with disabilities in the workplace. The initiative benefits the companies that invest in people with disabilities, and the employees become well-qualified workers and self-sufficient members of the community. Turn a disability into an opportunity. For more information, go to www.acdd.org or call 1-800-232-2158. Sponsored by the Alabama Council for Developmental Disabilities, the Alabama Disabilities Advocacy Program, the ABA, and this station.
We've all felt left out. And for people who move to this country, that feeling lasts more than a moment. We can change that. Learn how at belongingbeginswithus.org. Brought to you by the Ad Council.
WKXX 102.9.
We are Fox Sports!
Northeast Alabama's only all-sports station. WKXX, Fox Sports 102.9.
We are back here on WKXX Live, Fox Sports 102.9. Chase and Gerhard here with you as NFL preseason going on. We've talked a lot about that over the last few weeks. And a couple of teams meeting up for a practice, joint practice this week, and that is the Eagles and the Dolphins, and tons of former Alabama players on the field.
Yeah, for both teams, I think this is almost, to me, a kind of a reunion of sorts as these two teams get ready for their preseason game. And I love what the NFL does with this right before the preseason game. A lot of times these teams get up and they'll play or have a couple of practices, joint practices. They'll do some 11-on-11s, some 7-on-7s, and other things. And so they'll play in their preseason game coming up this weekend. However, that comes your way on Saturday night at 6 o'clock. But going into it, obviously you have the two quarterbacks that are the heads of both teams. For the Miami Dolphins, it's Tua Tagovailoa. For the Philadelphia Eagles, it's Jalen Hurts. But also for the Dolphins, they have Jalen Waddle and Roquan Davis, I should say. And then for the Philadelphia Eagles, they have Landon Dickerson, Josh Jobe, and Devontae Smith. So a lot of Alabama players, former Alabama players, were in-house in those matchups. And to me, Jalen and Tua will always be connected with one another.
Yeah. Just
their time at Alabama, I think a lot of people remember. They had a visceral feeling of remembering what rooting for your teammate was like with those two. You had the heartbreaker for Jalen being replaced in the national championship game, and then it came back the other way around. And both times you just saw they weren't playing through the cameras. They really were friends. They really liked each other. And I think because of that, because they left these indelible moments in our minds and our hearts as football fans, as former players of any sport, just teammates of any sport. I think you got to realize what a true teammate was watching those two.
Yeah.
So I think their careers will forever be synced. You add that on top of the fact that they're now in the NFL, and a lot of people have many doubts with both guys moving forward. But Jalen, as a first-year starter, took his team to the playoffs. And then Tua, dealing with all the nonsense they had to deal with down in Miami, he's expected to have a much better year this year. They gave him some weapons. They gave him Tyreek Hill, a lot of receivers. One of those receivers, Jalen Waddle, his former Alabama teammate. And so I think both players are in a unique position now to advance their NFL careers forward. And it's still good to see them really love each other outside of the confines of Tuscaloosa, and now carry that with them to hopefully what they deem is a successful career. So, of course, after the joint practices, both players met up with the media and got a chance to talk about it, and we'll hear from both. And one of the things that Tua talked about was about, number one, all those guys in general, the guys I just mentioned, being able to catch up with them, but at the same time, keeping his relationship with Jalen Hurts.
I think it was cool seeing my ex-Alabama teammates. You know, it's good to see that they're doing good for themselves and their families, being able to compete at the highest level. And it's not like they're backup guys; they're starters. So that was awesome to see. I knew when I went to Alabama, I'd have to compete against a guy that was really good. The year before that, he was the SEC Player of the Year at the time, and he led his team to the national championship. So I knew what I was up against. But at the same time, you go to a place like that, the standards are high, expectations are extremely high as well because of the success that they've had. And really just, you got to go out there and compete every day. And I would say that's how being at a place like Alabama has helped set up success for me coming into the NFL. Is, you know, nothing's given to you. You got to earn everything. I think all these relationships are important to me, not just with Jalen, but with Mac and the younger quarterbacks that are coming up from Alabama. You know, it's good to be in contact with those guys. They're starters, you know, and having a good relationship with them throughout the years at Alabama helps. Then you can call them, ask them about what they've seen with previous teams that they've played against in the NFL. How did they scheme you guys up? Just things like that, you know, and it doesn't always have to be football. It can also be, you know, how are you doing? You know, how's family life? How's everything like that? So, you know, I would say all of our relationships has been good.
So it's really interesting, in my opinion, to see how Tua is number one, you know, improving on his own, but then also has a lot of love for Jalen Hurts, and a lot of things that we saw of their relationship down in Tuscaloosa is still, you know, paving its way here in the NFL.
Yeah, for sure. And I mean, two really good quarterbacks. That's one of those when you see two good quarterbacks in college, you know that one of them kind of gets left out. And
right.
But like you mentioned, both of them had their time to shine in Alabama, and now both of them are doing big things in the National Football League, and that's what they were. You know, that's why they were playing college football, was to get to this level, and now they're able to do it.
That's exactly right. And then on the flip side of that, Jalen Hurts, you know, when he left Alabama for Oklahoma, it might have been the kindest, nicest way that we see, because these things can get hostile with fans. But I think for the most part, outside of some pockets, for the most part, he was so graceful as he left Alabama for Oklahoma, and Lincoln Riley did a good job of, you know, making him into an NFL quarterback. But he was hardened. He was carved in his days in Alabama, and he's never forgot that, or never forgot his love and respect for Tua Tagovailoa.
When you go to Alabama, obviously, you know, it's like you know you're gonna win a national championship. You know you're gonna have the opportunity to compete for one at least. That's always the approach we had. And then obviously the next step is going to the NFL and taking advantage of the opportunity if presented itself. And Alabama's been able to turn over a lot of talent. And that's been something Saban has done throughout his tenure for a long time. You know, I talk to those when I need to. You know what I mean? I know I reached out to Tua. They had a joint practice with the Falcons last year. So prior to the game, I reached out to them. Gave me some good insight on some things, and told me how he was, you know, kind of seeing their defense and personnel things. And then I actually gave him some insight on the Patriots. I think they played the Patriots early in the season last year. So it's always to be connected with guys around the league, coaches around the league, whoever. So, you know, it's all to help a friend. The friendship we have and being able to talk about who we're seeing in the league, and just kind of being a companion throughout the process of that. I want to see him win. I know he wants to see me win, and it was good to come out here.
So another really interesting fact, I think, with Jalen Hurts going into this year, you know, last year it was kind of a surprise to a lot of people. I think a lot of people didn't think that much about the Eagles.
Yeah.
Now this year they're like, hey, well, can they not only win their division, beating a really good Cowboys team, and of course the Giants, who I think a lot of people think the Giants will have a decent year, but you know, can they make a run? Can they really make a run this year in the playoffs? So I think that watching both players will be really interesting this year.
Yeah, and we talked with the Josh Tolentino from the Eagles a few weeks ago. He's really high on him. So yeah, I think Jalen Hurts can really lead them in the right direction.
That's exactly right. And one of the things that I always talk about at Alabama's process. Don't worry about all this final result. Don't look at the scoreboard. It's process. And a lot of times, especially with us here in the media, that just kind of sounds like coaching talking points that is just, you know, they're just words that don't really mean much. But it's clear that it does. And both players, both Jalen and Tua, both in their media availabilities, they both talked about that. And the fact that they've taken those lessons from Tuscaloosa and they just want to build. They want to build every single day. Their definition of success is that constant build, and both guys talked about it.
I think just being able to understand the concepts of the plays we're given on a day-to-day basis. There's some plays that are installed day of, and for us to go out there, you know, be able to walk through it, kind of see it come to life, and then execute it against our defense or an opposing team's defense. I think that's what he's kind of talking about.
I think just being in the playbook and getting an understanding of what I'm supposed to do. You know, when you play this game, you see so many pictures. And what I mean by that, you see so many things, you have so many reps, and you have to put them in your bank. And every rep is an experience, good, bad, or indifferent. So for me, the few games I had my rookie year, last year being a full-time starter, every single rep I've learned from it, and then I try and grow from it, and I learn, I just learn from it. That's the mentality.
So I think that, obviously this to me will be a really fun time to watch both quarterbacks as they develop. Yeah. And I don't really watch a ton of preseason games, but this being the one where the starters play the most, this third preseason game, the fact that it's Eagles Dolphins in Miami, this will be one I think to keep an eye out.
I think so too, and just with the storylines going in, it'll be great. But yeah, I think it'll be a really good game and a good chance to see those guys where they've improved and those guys heading into the season. So that should be a really fun preseason game there. Lots going on in preseason football right now. Again, September 8th, NFL season will get underway. We got college football this weekend, high school football going on as well. So a busy time there. College football, like we said, gearing up to start this season. We're going to get into some college football next. Hear what Nick Saban has to say about maybe what's going on the defensive side of the ball. Lots of talk on the offense. We'll talk about the defense, though, for the Crimson Tide when we come back here on WKXX Live. You stick around. And we're going to talk some Alabama football now. We're going to focus on the defense a little bit because, Gerhard, I mean, you look at what all's been talked about on defense as far as Alabama. It's been guys like Will Anderson, Dallas Turner, Henry To'oTo'o, those front seven guys. But I think that when you look past the front seven, there's a lot of talent back there. And it's in good hands with one specific guy, especially.
Most certainly. A guy like Jordan Battle, I should say, gets a little bit lost in the shuffle in the grand scheme talking about the Alabama defense. However, with so many questions at the cornerback position, and that was the case last year as the corners got hurt, the outsides, well, you needed somebody on the inside to stay stable to help basically be the quarterback of those 4 to 5 DBs that are on the field at any given time. And Jordan Battle is that guy. And last year, obviously, he had a really strong season. But this year, they're going to rely on him a whole lot more as they solidify those corners. And that cornerback battle is still going on as we speak. But Jordan Battle has kind of been the steady hand back there. Coach Saban is a DB guy, and he really likes what Battle has done up until this point and his leadership both on and off the field.
Well, Jordan's, first of all, a very bright guy. He's got really good work ethic. He loves the game. He loves to play, loves to practice. He sets a good example. He's a good leader. He's got a really, really good understanding of everything that we're doing in the secondary. Of course, he's got lots of experience, but he's a bright guy. And because he's very conscientious to go with really good ability, he's got really good size. He's improved his ability to cover people, I think, a lot last year and this spring and this fall so far. So, I just think he's really a complete player, and I think he's helping other players play better with his leadership. Communication is so important in the secondary, and when you have confident guys that aren't afraid to call out, it helps other people around them play with more confidence as well, and he certainly contributed to that in a very positive way.
Obviously, a rounding endorsement for Jordan Battle, who once again goes into this season as, there's not much. There's talk about position battles. There's a few that are locked up, and you mentioned the other ones earlier with Dallas, as far as Will Anderson, as guys like Henry To'oTo'o and Jordan Battle, and he's that as well. And depending on where you look, he's a first team All-American, first team preseason All-SEC as well. So getting a lot of respect, but sometimes a little bit overlooked considering just how strong that front seven is.
Yeah, you're right about that. But to get the endorsement that he just got from Nick Saban, who, if I was a defensive back, that would be one scary position to be for Alabama, because Nick Saban's right there watching every move. He's the DB coach. So to get that high of praise from Nick Saban is something.
If you watch any practice film of Alabama and Nick Saban, even to this day, he'll get on guys, he'll yell at, scream guys, but the majority of his practice in individual drills, at least, is with those defensive backs. And so you have a bad day or two, you're hearing it constantly. If you're an offensive lineman, you'll hear it from your position coach, but you won't hear it from Coach Saban. If at the DBs, you hear it from Coach Saban, both the corners and the safeties. And so for Jordan Battle to get that high praise lets you know that just day after day, and then, of course, year after year, he's been a multi-year starter now. He's doing exactly what the coaches like to see, both on the field and off the field, getting those guys ready.
And I know you mentioned the battle at the cornerback position that is still ongoing there for the Crimson Tide.
Yeah, a lot of talent back there and on the corners, but they're still trying to find, the two guys that'll obviously start on both sides, but then the guy that comes in as your nickel corner, and some other guys that can come in and play at those positions. And you have guys like Cooley McKinstry, fantastic player out of Pinson Valley. You have a guy like Eli Ricks, the transfer out of LSU, preseason All-American. But who would have thought a preseason All-American will have to fight for his job at Alabama? That's how deep they are at that position. Also, other guys as well that are playing into that spot. Kyrie Jackson has done a really solid job, and so I think this is something that Coach Saban he's ready to let the battle play out and let the best guy over the course of these last few practices in fall camp, as they get into game week preparation next week, just let it play out the way that it's supposed to play out, and not have any solidified starters saying, hey, all you guys are talented. Nobody's really separated themselves in practice as of yet, and then being able to take their games to the next level.
Absolutely. And so here is Coach Saban discussing that with the media.
There's a lot of competition. I can't tell you who the starters are. I think we've got 4 guys, maybe 5, that are all competing for positions, and they're all making progress. A couple guys were hurt. Kyrie missed a few days. Eli missed, a whole week. So, but they're all battling, and they're all competition, and hopefully the competition's making them better. But I can't say, other than that, I really can't say much about any of them. They're all working hard, and there's a lot of competition at the position, and we'll see how it shakes out.
You see, the good thing is he doesn't sound disappointed, because the biggest thing is, like he was talking about, the number 2s offensively. And it sounds like there's some disappointment there because there's not consistency. He doesn't sound disappointed in the corners. He's just hoping that this strengthens all of them in this kind of an iron sharpening iron situation and just finding the best 2.
Yeah, and that's a good point to bring out in there. He doesn't sound disappointed in that. Yeah, for sure. So lots going on. Alabama getting ready, of course, for Utah State next Saturday. Not the typical game we're used to for Alabama starting off. We'll get that against Texas on September the 10th. But first game next Saturday, September the 3rd, against Utah State. And we'll see what the defense looks like. I think it could be a really good defense there for the Crimson Tide. Of course, got to stay healthy, and I think it could be really good.
Yeah, cross your fingers on the health. That's the biggest thing. We saw how that played out last year. Everybody talks about the receivers and the injuries that were sustained there with Mechie and Jamison Williams, but not a lot was talked about with those corners as well. And that's the reason why they needed a guy like Eli Ricks to come in from LSU, give them a proven starter in the SEC. And then he hurts himself as well. And so you never can be too deep, really at any position. I know the NCAA limits you on scholarships, but you need to have a lot of different players that can come in, fill those gaps. And the health is the biggest thing. I know Bama fans are, crossing their fingers and knocking on wood for that, but it looks like the defense will be probably one of the best that it's ever been. I don't see how any team can be able to run consistently on this defense with that front 7. Yeah. And if they solidify those corners, and of course the safety with Jordan Battle, it's going to be hard to pass on them as well.
Yes, it really is. And so we'll get you ready for some Alabama football coming up next week. And this Saturday begins the college kickoff show. Every Saturday morning from 9 to 10, you'll hear Gerhard and I as we'll preview the Saturday's action there on the college level. So looking forward to that. That begins this Saturday. We'll spend a lot of time getting ready for Jacksonville State and Stephen F. Austin Saturday morning from 9 to 10 on the college kickoff show. And so we're excited to do that, and we'll have lots of good college football talk.
Yeah, we certainly will. Obviously, this is a really fun time of year as we get into college football. We kind of get our appetite just settle out a little bit here in these first couple of weeks. And there's not super crazy intriguing games there as far as the overall college football slate. There's a lot of intriguing matchups, like the one you'll hear right here on Fox Sports 102.9 with Stephen F. Austin and Jacksonville State. Yeah, I also have a couple of games featuring 2 teams that are in the Power 5, whether it's Pitt, West Virginia, and a few others. I think that we have an interesting slate as we first start. But the whole week 0 concept, the week 0 matchup, is some of the things that we've seen on the high school level. We're now seeing it on the college level as well. I know there's a game in Ireland too coming up this week. So to me, I think this is going to be a really, really fun time of year as we get ready for, once again, another great high school and college football season, but college football especially here.
Yes, and so that starts Saturday morning, 9 o'clock on the college kickoff show. We've got Oaks Bluff High School football for you coming up in just a couple of hours. 6:30 is the countdown to kickoff. You'll hear from Coach Mike Robertson there on the pregame show. Kickoff is at 7, and Oaks Bluff Southside, big Etowah County matchup there. Excited to bring that one to you a little bit later on. We'll be back with you tomorrow for WKXX Live on a Friday 1-hour edition of the show. We'll pack a lot into 1 hour, getting you ready for a weekend of high school and college football. So we hope you join us then. We'll talk to you tonight for some Oaks Bluff football. You have a great rest of your Thursday. We'll see you tomorrow.
You know who WKXX calls for all their HVAC needs?